Good evening, YouTube. Tyler Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. Hopefully, you're safe. It's been a very active day today. A lot of severe weather, snow going on too, ice storms going on. I think I even may have just seen a tornado go through Gulfport, Mississippi here, which is crazy. We had a tornado hit New Orleans earlier today. It's been absolutely insane. We have 24 tornado reports so far and counting because there's still active tornado warnings right now. And then there's a little corridor where a new tornado watch might be possible. We'll go ahead and look at that really quickly. Discrete supercells are likely to develop in this region right here. There's an avid warm sector, a loft, and moist sector as well. And with the wind shear profile that we have, it's no surprise that we are likely to see more supercells and an increase in the tornado threat as this cold front draws closer. Also keep in mind, we do have a slight risk for tomorrow as well, and we'll cover that in brief detail in this video. We'll be a little bit more detailed in the morning, because more than likely then I'll be able to cover whatever's going on with a little more focus, because we're also going to cover the wintry side of this in just a moment. So our not much has really changed with our slight risk area. If anything, this has been pushed a little bit further to the east. So Tallahassee, you're not in this for 2 days in a row, but you do have an overnight threat. Make no mistake about that. When we get into the morning and afternoon hours, the central peninsula of Florida is where I'm concerned. So basically over towards Fort Myers, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville. I'm watching you guys. Daytona Beach, including you too. We're watching you for severe weather. That's towards the peninsula. And then pretty much the entire Georgia coast, almost all of the South Carolina coast, we're watching you closely for severe weather. Even in these marginal areas, we're including almost the entire North Carolina coast here. We'll keep an eye on you for severe weather development. And then parts of South Georgia, talk about Vidalia and several other areas as well. Keep an eye on you too. This is partially driven mostly by the tornado threat. Given the wind shear profile, I mean, it's just almost a certainty that we may see a couple of tornadoes develop. And then the same can be said with the wind threat. Hail threat's going to be relatively to a minimum. Lapse rates just aren't very sufficient for that. So that's of no concern, at least, if there's any upside at all. But the real upside there is that we aren't going to be seeing severe weather on Friday, which is great news. So maybe now I can start to cover other material. Just know that there will be an influx of content coming you guys' way in regards to other stuff, because there might be another big storm system next week that I haven't even had a chance to really look at too much, because I've been having my hands full with this. That being said, though, let's go ahead and take a look at the reflectivity here. Let's see what kind of mode these storms will be in as we head into the overnight and the morning hours. You can kind of see these little discrete cells that are popping up around the Gulf of Mexico. These are going to be moving in this way. And this is why the Storm Prediction Center is so concerned about this area. Because this is an area of the atmosphere that's untapped. There's no real storms competing with it here. You also have to keep an eye out for these embedded supercells here as well, because these also have potential to produce tornadoes, although the potential for them will be a little bit lower. So we'll watch over in this region. We can't even rule out southern Georgia for maybe having a severe storm or two. I do think once we get towards the morning hours, things will start to intensify. So you see these little discrete cells out ahead of this main line here. We'll have to watch that, especially as these go onshore onto the Florida coast. You see a couple of rounds of these. Then towards southern Georgia, we're watching that. I think this threat could be pushed a little bit further north maybe. A lot of that's going to depend on instability and other parameters. But I do think right around here there could be a slightly more elevated tornado threat. So as we move this along, by the afternoon hours, this is heading into the coast of South Carolina here. This is where our greatest threat will remain, probably through the rest of the afternoon. But I do think by the evening hours, this will be over for just about everybody that's in the severe weather region. This system will be moving off coast, and then this will become a northeaster type of problem, if you know what I mean. So one thing to look at here, and this is kind of verifying more so what the Storm Prediction Center was looking at earlier. This is the Theta E. I rarely use this, but this is a good index for indicating energy for thunderstorms. Or that's just the lamest term way of putting it. So we'll move this along here, and you can see that right around here, this little blue area is where we're looking at 342K. This is also indicating joules, but this is not indicating joules per kilogram like CAPE. Let's not get these two confused. But anything above 300 is usually sufficient for thunderstorms. But anything above 330, you can start to see severe weather. Those values are still present through southern parts of south central Alabama, through the Florida Panhandle, and this is going to transition its way to the east as well. Some of these areas are going to go beyond that, starting to get towards 345, 350, in some spots even. Off coast is where a lot of these storms are going to be popping up here towards the low levels, and they're going to be pushing in this way. So in all likelihood, a lot of tornadoes that may pop up here on the Florida coast may start out as waterspouts. So you happen to be out on the water, I honestly would discourage you just not to do it, period. Because not only tornadoes, these storms are producing a boatload of lightning. So just one other thing to make note of here. So we'll move this along, and we'll go into Thursday afternoon. The K value or joules still pretty high, even towards the South Carolina coast as we get towards the afternoon hours. So these areas, of course, are going to be of greatest concern. Main threat is going to be, of course, tornadoes and wind. Hail threat is going to be minimal, but we'll just have to see how things unfold with this. Let's go ahead and take a look now at our snowfall totals. This is a 72-hour total when the snow started to fall. You can even see towards the northeast, they're starting to get a little bit of action, mainly toward the mountain ranges. An inch or two has fallen since this has been issued. And then over towards these regions where we have blizzard conditions ongoing. Some places are seeing about 1.5 feet of snow as we speak right now. Have seen about 1.5 feet of snow as we speak right now. Other areas there's a lot of widespread areas where we have about 6 to 8 inches. Some places even hitting towards 12. But there's still plenty more snow to fall here, so these final totals are going to be probably insane. We're starting to see more action begin to develop here in Minnesota. We have central Minnesota here being the big winner right now, where we're seeing 6 to 8 inches, and the action's starting to sneak its way into Wisconsin, whereas northwest Wisconsin has about 4 inches of snow right now. Another thing to note is the ice storm that's gone on in parts of southeastern and central Wisconsin. We're getting reports of about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of ice, and that's a big deal because in reality 1/10 of an inch of ice will cause problems for anyone in any state. Usually the roads end up becoming almost impassable just with that. When you get to about 1/4 inch ice, that's when you start worrying about power outages. Put in perspective for you, 1/4 inch of ice on 1 square foot of a power line is almost the equivalent of 500 pounds. So just imagine that being on your back, and just imagine what it's doing to that power line cable. So it's a lot to think about. Then we also have to watch this region over here towards the Virginias and parts of the interior of not Philadelphia, but Pennsylvania for the potential of another ice storm. And I'll show you how those dynamics end up coming to be in just a second, actually. So here we are, we're back on to pivotal weather. So before we start with that here, one thing I want to take a look at also is just the amount of wind energy that's associated with this storm system. These are over our areas with severe weather right now. We're still getting gusts up to about 32, 35, maybe even 40 miles an hour in a lot of places. And we have these separate little areas where we're getting up to about 40 miles an hour up towards the Great Lakes. On the backside of our storm system here, where we're getting additional snowfall. So blizzard conditions will be ongoing over in this region, maybe even for potentially the next 24 hours. Who knows? As we continue to move along here, these wind gusts are still going to be screaming over the western parts of Nebraska, South Dakota, and even North Dakota. Then we start to see an increase of wind over towards the Great Lakes region, so I wouldn't rule out blizzard conditions here as well. A lot of this will depend on the duration more so than anything else, but I do think it's very possible. Then we'll have to look towards the eastern half of the Dakotas where we have these ridiculous wind gusts. Sustained winds are going to be a key part of everything, but if we're just looking at gust alone, this could be a big problem over there as well. As we go towards Friday, this wind energy is still lingering over there, so even if you don't have a full-on blizzard, you could have blizzard-like conditions for several days, blowing snow for several days, which would become a huge pain in anyone's side. Then over towards the northeast, most of the wind looks like it's going to stay offshore, but it still looks like it's going to create hazardous conditions. Another thing to note will be the wind chill index as well. Because one thing that we aren't mentioning is the simple fact that there's still cold air rushing in behind these systems too. So as we head towards the weekend, some of these areas could be dealing with wind chills near or even below zero in some spots, especially towards the overnight hours. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that too, because some people need to stay aware on that. Over towards the north, you're a little bit more used to it, so it doesn't surprise me that much. So it's not surprising to you that much, I'm sure. But even so, you don't want to get blindsided by this at all. So for right now, it looks like the temperatures mainly are staying, the wind chills are staying above zero in a lot of places. But once we start to get towards late Friday, that's when things start to get a little bit colder, a little bit more uncomfortable. We may even have some places get into the negative teens here on the wind chills. So we head into Friday afternoon. And then once we head towards Saturday, that cold air only reinforces itself further. So some record cold here could be possible. Very uncomfortable conditions seem likely. And just look in total how much the cold air really starts to overtake the country here. So especially over towards the southeast, if you happen to put your jacket away, I know you probably had to pull it out today, well, because it was about 50 degrees, if even that. Get ready, because the real cold air is just now starting once we get into the weekend. So yeah, a lot to cover there, but we still got more to go. Let's go ahead and take a look at our precip map here. This is looking towards, we're mainly going to have our focus towards the northeast, but we will keep an eye on this low because that's going to be a key factor for what goes on here. This is according to the NAM too, by the way. So we'll start moving this along here. Plenty of snow on the backside of this system here. And as it continues to be cold air that reinforces this moisture that's left behind, we're still going to allow for much greater snowfall totals to be put down in these regions as well. So move this along and look at this snow shield that develops on the backside of this. Still some areas of ice that are possible around here, but the totals are going to be kind of minimized here. But over towards Wisconsin and parts of Minnesota, even parts of northern Illinois, maybe even towards Chicago, you're going to see some heavy snow at some point. And then look at how this spins in this counterclockwise rotation and ends up just continuing to spread snow throughout the Dakotas, throughout Wisconsin and Minnesota, even parts of Iowa getting in on the action here. And then once this finally starts to move, now we have a nor'easter, and you would think, okay, this storm's starting to run out of cold air. There's warm air coming in on the backside of this. Because of this low pressure here, this will allow snow to continue to fall around these regions here. So there's going to be big snowfall totals here as a result of that. But if we backtrack here, again, now this is where you start to pay attention more over towards parts of the Virginias and parts of Pennsylvania, especially northwestern Pennsylvania. Look at this ice right here. This is due in large part to the severe weather system that's right here as of right now. We move this along, and then we have this low pressure right here that's helping pull in cold air behind this. And then we have a low pressure that emerges here. And this becomes almost like a double whammy. You get the warm air from this system going in towards the surface and trying to rise, meeting with this cold air here and the higher levels of the atmosphere. Some of that cold air sinks in towards the bottom, keeps the ground below freezing as it's already been cold over here. And as a result, we end up getting freezing rain and ice, and an ice event begins to unfold here. And then on the backside of this, we start to get our snow, and then this system only reinforces that snow and causes a potential for heavy snow, especially towards the Great Lakes even. So there's a lot going on here with this system. This is going to be a dynamic system from start to finish. This is definitely going to be one that we remember for sure. And this is not something to be trifled with, even if you're in the Northeast, even if you're used to snow, because it could be an ongoing event for several days. If you don't believe me, just ask anyone that's lived in this region. They'll tell you firsthand. This was not fun. Anyway, let's go ahead and look at the snowfall totals, and then we'll also look at the ice totals after that. So, unfortunately, during this hour, there aren't any National Weather Service blend of models here. I kind of have an idea of what the totals will be, but it's actually not too far off from this, I would think. Some places, according to the NAM alone, we're still seeing potential for an additional 6, 10, maybe some places even a foot as we get into these little pockets of purple here of snow. And then the same can be said in these little pockets right here within Minnesota and Wisconsin. Some places may see more than a foot of additional snow here. And then towards the weekend, once we get to the mountain ranges of the Adirondacks, we're looking at almost 2 feet of snow now, possibly, according to the NAM. A lot of other pockets here where we could still be seeing up to almost 2 feet, if not a foot and a half of snow. And then the same can be said for areas around New York City even. You're getting into the action here. You could see about 1 to 3 inches, some places even 4 inches of snow. And then towards the Great Lakes, we're getting pretty hefty snowfall too. We're getting about 6 to 8 inches in a lot of regions. Once we start to push more towards the coast, of course, that's when we start to struggle with that warm air, and we end up getting very little snow as a result. And if we compare this to the rest of the models, it's not very different actually. There's a lot of confidence in this occurring. A lot of places are still expecting about a foot of snow. There's one spot here where the GFS has pocket here towards western South Dakota where we get about 20 inches of snow here. Actually 33 inches of snow. That's crazy. It's a little bit bold if you ask me, but I'm not ruling it out at this point. GDPS seems to be a little bit more on the conservative side, whereas we're seeing maybe about a foot, 17 inches. That seems a little bit more realistic, but still can't rule out higher totals than that, especially in more isolated pockets with these snow bands. But I do think there will be a lengthy period where we do see heavy snow in pretty much either one of these regions. Euro's a little bit more aggressive. Just off the border of Minnesota and towards the UP of Michigan, we could see about 20 inches plus of snow, maybe even more than 2 feet. But yeah, there's a lot of moving parts with this. It's pretty crazy to think about. Now let's go ahead and look at the ice totals now. So as I mentioned earlier, already a 1/4 inch ice had fallen over in these regions. But when we get towards the latter half of this event, towards the weekend, NAM is a little bit more aggressive. in a lot of these regions. We could still see almost another 2/10 of ice, and this could also be augmented with snowfall too. So it's big. Things might get even more hairy over in these regions. And then over here we see a little pocket where we could get another 2/10 of ice. I don't think that necessarily will be the case. I think a lot of what will fall here from this point forward will end up being more snow than ice. But even so, this will have to be watched closely. This is where I'm a little more concerned. All the models show a lot of consistency that's leaning more towards, I'd say, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch ice. But the NAM's really bold with this here, as we see some areas where we're over 3/4 inches of ice. Whoa, pause a second here. Thought I just saw a total where I was seeing 1 and 1/4 inch ice. I don't think I buy that, but yeah. All right, yeah, here it is right here. 1 and 1/4 inch ice. I don't think I buy that. I think it's a little bit too extreme. But we'll see what happens with that. And we do have the blender models with ice. I don't know why we get it with the snowfall. When we look at the blender models here, a lot more conservative. Although we do see an area here where we get to about 0.64. That's almost 3/4 of an inch still. That's pretty alarming. It's a lot of ice. Power outages at that point would almost be a guarantee if that were to be the case. But you can clearly tell the difference here. Only 1/10 of an inch ice. That seems a lot more realistic. I still wouldn't even think that there will be that much over in these regions. And then over towards the Great Lakes of Michigan, I think maybe it looks like about 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more ice. I don't really think that will be the case. We'll see what happens. Over towards this region is going to be the area of greatest concern here. GFS is pretty aggressive with this. That's nothing new though, but even then it's not showing a full inch ice, which is, I don't know what the NAM was looking at, what the NAM is thinking. The Canadian's pretty aggressive with this as well, which is a little bit alarming considering the fact that we have a couple of moderately reliable models pointing towards 1 inch of ice in some spots. So the potential really might be there. Let's just hope that that's not the case, because that could be a crippling event if that ends up coming to fruition. But even so, still an alarming trend here where we're seeing 3/4 inches of ice. You don't need 1 inch of ice. I don't think anyone wants 1 inch of ice. I'll be the first to tell you that right now. I don't even think anyone wants 1/4 inch ice, because that's already a high probability of power outage, which is crazy. But the fact that we're seeing this on almost all the models where we're getting to that 3/4 inch mark is very concerning. So a lot to still cover here. Lengthy video, I know, and I apologize for that, but that's just how big this storm system actually is. It's pretty crazy. But this is the end of the video here. If you found any information here useful, especially if you made it to the end, definitely drop me a like. Let me know if you're slated to be affected by the storm in any way, shape, or form in the comments, of course. If you haven't subscribed already, definitely do so, because I'll be continuously covering this event until the end. I'll be putting up about 2 videos a day until it's over, at the very least, and we'll just kind of see how things unfold from that point. But anyway, this has been Tyre, Metalhead Weatherman. I'll see you guys in the morning. Take care, stay safe, and stay weather aware. Have a good night.